My story is about Irving Berlin. Now, I'm sure some of you know that Irving Berlin wrote music for Broadway musicals and for Hollywood films, but he also wrote songs for members of his family. For instance, he wrote this song for his sweetheart, Ellen McKay, who later became his wife. He wrote this song when they were separated for 6 months. I'll start with the verse, but whenever you recognize the song, join in. And if you don't know the words, we'll just hum along. Everything went wrong, and the whole day long I'd feel so blue. For the longest while I forgot to smile, then I met you. Now that my blue days are past, now that I've found you at last, I'll be loving you always, with a love that's true always. When the things you've planned need a helping hand, I will understand always, always. Days may not be fair always. That's when I'll be there always. Not for just an hour, not for just a day, not for just a year, but always. Irving Berlin wrote that song in 1924. He was a self-made man about town in New York City. He was 36 years old, and he was Jewish. Ellen McKay was a 21-year-old socialite. Her father was worth $30 million in 1924, which I think would probably be about $30 billion today. And she was Catholic. And even though they were Catholic, they were in the New York Social Register, which was not an easy thing to do in those days. Well, as you probably can imagine, when Ellen's father found out that his daughter was dating Irving Berlin, he was not pleased. He called her into his study and said, "I want you to promise me that you will stop seeing that immigrant." And Ellen said, "I cannot promise you that." Now, it was true that Irving was an immigrant. His earliest memory was when he was 4 years old and living in Russia. He and all the members of his family were lying in a ditch, watching as their home and village were burned during a pogrom. The next year, the family moved to Manhattan and settled in the Lower East Side. Irving later said, "I never knew we were poor. There was always bread and butter to eat and hot tea to drink." But they were poor. And things only got worse when Irving's father died when Irving was 10 years old. When he was 14, he went out on his own so as to no longer be a burden to his widowed mother. But that was years ago. By 1924, he was a rich man. Well, at least what we would consider rich. He was nowhere in the league with Ellen's father, but he was a wealthy man. Ellen later told people that in that first conversation with her father, the fact that Irving was Jewish never came up. But she said it was there just below the surface. After all, that was a time when Jews were not allowed in country clubs, and it was common to find signs on the windows of hotels and restaurants that said, "No dogs or Jews allowed." How disrespectful is that? Well, Ellen and Irving kept on seeing each other. Ellen's father kept on pressing Ellen to stop seeing that immigrant. Finally, one day he called her into his study and said, "I want to see how strong your attachment is to that man and his to you. I want you two to be separated for 6 months. Take a tour of Europe. But I want you to promise me not to speak to him during that entire 6 months. Ellen said, I can promise you that. She kept her promise. She didn't speak to Irving at all during that 6-month period. She wrote him almost every day. And she frequently sent him telegrams using the company her father did not own, just in case he was keeping very close tabs on her. But when she returned after 6 months, and this was the 6-month period when Irving wrote the song Always. Ladies, can you imagine a boyfriend writing you a song like Always? Oh. Well, anyways, when she returned, no one's feelings had changed. Not hers, not Irving's, not her father's. Ellen and Irving started telling their friends things like, well, if we marry, and as the months went on, that changed to, when we marry, we'll probably do it at the spur of the moment. And that's exactly what happened. In early January of 1926, Irving called Ellen on the phone. I can no longer live like this. I want to marry you today. I have our marriage license. Take a taxi cab over to my apartment right now, and together we'll go to City Hall and get married this morning. Ellen said, yes, I'll be there. She didn't even stop to change her dress, and she'd been just ready to leave to go to the hairdresser's. And, you don't wear your nicest dress when you're going to the hairdresser's, and it's going to get covered with hair and maybe goop. She didn't stop to change her dress. She just got her pocketbook, went outside, hailed a cab, took it over to Irving's apartment, and then together they went to City Hall by the subway. And this was her very first subway ride, even though she had lived in New York City her entire life. For his wedding gift, Irving gave Ellen the rights to the song Always, which over the course of the years was worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. It was one of his most popular songs. It was just as well that Irving gave Ellen a gift that was worth money, because the day after they were married, Ellen's father had her written out of his will. And the next time the New York Social Registry was published, Ellen's name was not in it. But despite the disapproval of society in general and her father in particular, Ellen and Irving had a wonderful marriage. They raised 3 daughters in both religions. And there was never a hint of Irving ever fooling around with another woman, which was quite unusual for those days, a man with his wealth and power. Near their 50th wedding anniversary, Ellen was interviewed by a reporter who had the nerve to ask, how did it feel marrying outside your social class? Ellen replied, yes, I married outside my social class. I married up. Their marriage lasted over 64 years, only ending with Ellen's death when she was in her mid-80s. Irving died 18 months later when he was 101. But everything he had written in that song so many years before had happened. Here's the second verse. Dreams will all come true, growing old with you, and time will fly, caring each day more than the day before, till spring rolls by. Then when the springtime has gone, then will my love linger on. I'll be loving you always, with a love that's true always. When the things you've planned need a helping hand, I will understand always, always. Days may not be fair always, that's when I'll be there always. Not for just an hour, not for just a day, not for just a year, but always.
Wonderful.
Thank you.